If you enjoy the content and want to support the production of further content and also look like a badass, I suggest you go to KabukiWarrior.com and check out these nice Whiskey and Deadlift t-shirts. Additionally, we've got a number of products and new products that we're releasing that will help you perform better and move better, from coaching products to products like the shoulder rock. So please check out KabukiWarrior.com.
This is Mark Bell from SuperTraining.tv, Super Training Gym, the strongest gym in the West. And speaking of the strongest, I'm here with one of the strongest athletes we've ever had inside of Super Training Gym. I'm here with Chris Duffin, a world record squatter, an 881-pound squat at 220 pounds body weight, just in a pair of knee wraps and a belt. Perhaps one of the greatest squats of all time. 4 times body weight squat, you do the math on that. And also the inventor of a new product called the shoulder rock. So we're excited to have Chris here today. We're going to have him share some of his story. We're also going to talk a lot about powerlifting, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that he took me through today to help me get out of pain. So first things first, you know, with being a world record holder, I think a lot of people don't always understand the discipline that it takes to get there. So what are some of the things that you had to do to hit this 881 squat? It wasn't like you just woke up one day and said, I'm going to set the world record. Yeah, I'm sure it was a long progression. It's probably been a long road. How long have you been lifting for?
I've been lifting, I've had that question a few times. I'm not exactly sure, but probably around 20 years or so. I've been competing in powerlifting for 15 years. And yeah, I mean, it's been a long road to get to that number. I mean,
right.
A lot of people have become more aware of me in recent years and go, where have you come from? Well, been around for a while.
Right.
And, you know, I've had visions of, you know, hitting those big numbers and big things for a very long time, at least 10 years, over a decade. You know, it's been a long road. And
before the 881 raw squat, there was also a history of geared powerlifting, a long history. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I actually got into this sport, well, when the heyday of gear was prominent, and that's
being
why,
fat and wearing as much gear as you can.
That's right. I'm a gear whore at heart. So that's how I started in the sport, and spent quite a bit of time. And you know, I was progressing and trying to push for. I always had visions of hitting that, you know, an all-time, you know, record total or squat.
And chasing after guys like Sean Frankel and some of those.
Exactly, and you know, the numbers just kept moving higher and higher. And,
yeah.
You know, I never quite put together the number I wanted because of my body weight fluctuations and other things. And I finally said, I want to go after raw lifting because, one, the numbers don't change as often. And yeah, that was, and also with, you know, weight cutting, things of that nature, you don't have to deal with my gear doesn't fit. And also I work and live a very, very busy lifestyle.
Right.
And so I didn't have time really to mess with it anymore. So
yeah,
I just needed to simplify my training.
Yeah, for those of you that are unaware or who are not aware enough of geared powerlifting workout could take 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours easily. When you're talking about squatting, Chris has squatted successfully over 1,000 pounds several times in competition, I believe. And when you're talking about getting to a 1,000-pound squat, it all starts with the bar, just like everybody else, 135 pounds, 225, 315, and so on. That progression takes a very long time. To get the amount of work in that's necessary to squat over 1,000 pounds right. can take hours and hours and hours, whereas a raw powerlifting workout is quite different, right?
Yes, and so, you know, I'm a business professional as well. I own a gym, and on top of, you know, my career outside.
And having kids, you have 2 children yep. and a wife.
And so, yeah, I just wasn't able to fit that into my schedule anymore, and so I made the transition so I could get my work in, get my assistants' work in, and just kind of refine my training and
right.
focus focus a little bit more on my training. So,
I think, you know, a lot of times, you know, I myself get asked a lot of questions, you know, about business, about the slingshot and where the invention came from, where the idea, where the concept came from. A lot of great things come from adversity. It's my belief, you know, when my oldest brother passed away, the slingshot was soon to follow, and it's not a coincidence. And in your situation, I've heard you talk before on EliteFTS.com about some of the trials and tribulations you had growing up. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I definitely grew up with a different environment than I think a lot of people have grown up with today. Not necessarily, bad. You just don't know what it is. It's just different until you start getting older and realize that, you're not living the way that other people are.
Right.
But actually, I grew up a lot of times in Northern California, kind of northwest of here, up in the mountains, the Trinity Mountains.
Right.
So we spent a lot of time up there, and my parents just didn't really fit in with society. So we lived out in the woods, killed animals, foraged for mushrooms.
Right.
And, we'd live in condemned houses during the winter to be close so we could go to school. During the summers, we'd just be up in the mountains, basically camping out and living. Reading books by candlelight and that sort of thing. And so at one point...
so was there still a focus on some education there as well?
Definitely. So my parents were very intelligent and well-read, but they just, the fitting in with society part, just... They had their own visions of how they wanted to live life.
They didn't want to conform.
Yep. And so at one point the state came in and actually found out, where we were, and they took all of us kids away, and we ended up in different foster homes. And
Shit,
finally,
man,
after,
what was that? I mean,
it
must have ripped you guys apart.
Yeah, it was really traumatic, at least especially for my sisters.
And what age was this at? How old were you about?
I was in first or second grade, and we were just up on some back road up in the mountains, and all these police cars started rolling.
You had
out.
No idea what the hell it was about.
And I knew what it was about. My sisters didn't. They were crying and bawling and asking for their mother. And
so you were maybe a little older than your years already.
Probably.
A little bit more mature. You kind of knew what was going on.
Yeah.
You were first grade. You're probably 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah, I think I must have been in second grade because I was in third grade when I was in foster care.
Okay.
And then parents did finally, win us back, and we spent. Maybe I was might have been fourth grade.
Okay.
So I must have been in third grade when that happened.
So you're 7, 8 years old, perhaps.
So because then we moved to Oregon. They, had a plan of getting on their feet. We had a house that was their house, and so we lived there for about a year, and then kind of fell back into the same routine. We ended up over in Eastern Oregon, up in the mountains. Remember
so while I was
clubbing porcupines to death for food, and fishing, and that's what I would go do every. I'd wake up in the morning and I'd go out and I'd catch grasshoppers, and I'd string them up on my fishing hook, and I'd wander up and down the streams, catching fish, which then we'd cook, and or we'd grab the 22 and walk down the road to where the rabbit den was, and shoot some rabbits. And parents would do some logging on occasion. They got into collecting rocks and mining, and so I was put to work hauling rocks up the side of the hills. And people always ask me, it goes back to how long you've been lifting. Well, I've been working pretty physical like most of my life, and climbing up the side of mountains when you're a kid with 100, 200 pound pack of rocks on your back is. So
the first time you did pull-ups or push-ups and stuff like that, it was probably fairly easy for you.
Yeah.
Right.
So I got into as I started progressing in school and stuff. That's where I just had a big disconnect. I didn't communicate well with people. I didn't understand. I didn't really fit in, and we were dirt poor. I mean, you see kids today that are poor, and they all have nice clothes, and they're still may have a nice car that they're getting driven around in. I mean, we, once a week we would fill up our jugs of gallons from the stream and set them out on the rock to heat up so that we could wash. And when we were in town living in cabins and stuff like that, there was no electricity, there was no running water.
How did that make you feel? Did that make you feel in any way inferior, or was that just the way things were, period?
At that point, it definitely, as you're starting dealing with kids can be cruel. And, so I smell, my clothes are dirty, and that's buttons for people to push. And so.
Get into fights?
Never got in fights.
Okay. You just took it. Somebody would say something, you just kind of.
And so that progressed, and then I started getting closer to high school, and by that time we actually moved into a mobile home. So this was high school. It ended up being pretty stable for me. It was the fire department burned it down when we moved out because it was not livable, but that was our home. It was awesome for us. So we didn't have doors, but we actually had running water, and we You know, we didn't have a kitchen, but we had, you know, plywood countertops and stuff like that.
So you'd say you didn't grow up with a lot of the conventional things that maybe other children had. Some people, you know, grow up rich or wealthy, but maybe they don't have. Did you have a lot of love? Was there a lot of love in your family still?
They weren't very good at demonstrating love. I would say that very well at all. So,
but they did maybe try their best.
They would try their best, but there was, you know, there was drug and alcohol problems.
I see.
And like I said, the environment wasn't the best. And in fact, so that when I left, I helped kind of hold things together at some level. And you know, for me, there was no
mental health issues on top of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
now it's all starting to kind of, yeah. Well, my brother was bipolar. You know, he's no longer with us because of that. But you know,
but I ended up taking custody
that, you know,
of my sisters when I went to college. So for me, there was no way out. Like, you know, we lived in this environment, and so I performed well at school. I performed well at sports. Sports actually helped help me acclimate, like lifting weights and being, you know, built self-confidence and got me involved with other people, and that really helped me a lot. And then so I ended up getting a full ride scholarship, academic.
Awesome.
I was valedictorian 4.0. I was a state champion wrestler. So I performed pretty well. So I got a full ride academic scholarship. And about 2 years in, so I spent the first 2 years just kind of focused on myself, which was, you know, involved, you know, just I was working full time, going to school, doing my thing. And so at that point, things started falling really bad at home. So I ended up taking custody of my 3 younger sisters, and I raised all of them through their teenage years while I went to school getting my bachelor's degree.
So you're legally
my master's and so on. So yeah,
caretaker.
I took
father,
legal, I took legal custody of them. And,
wow.
And really became their father figure.
And how much younger are they?
Roughly about 10 years younger.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're all pretty close in age together. And
you got custody when you were 20?
Yeah, 20, 21, somewhere in there. Yep.
Okay, and they're 10.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. It varied in age.
Yeah, of course.
And so basically I had all of them through actually until the last one was finally moved out when I was getting married to my wife. So we had a house together and stuff by that time. And
so a lot of the stuff you're talking about, though, is this, you know, you talked about, you know, getting excellent grades and getting an academic scholarship and doing well in wrestling. And it seems like you're, you know, even at a young age already achieving some great things, especially coming from the background that you're coming from. Did that make you hungry? Did that give you a burning desire to excel? Or is that something kind of instilled with you because you were carrying rocks up a mountain and stuff like that?
I'm not exactly sure. You know, I've given that thought many times. My brother lived through the same thing, and he has some significant mental health issues, and basically it broke him mentally. And my sisters have all done fairly well, you know, but I ended up they had some struggle times before I kind of came in and took the guidance portion of their life and got them heading in the right direction. But of all of them, I'm definitely the person. It didn't turn all into who I am. I'm definitely very, very driven. In anything that I take on, it sounds silly, but I try to be the best in the world at everything that I do.
Right. It's got to be big, or you're not doing it.
Exactly.
It's got to be over the top.
I don't do a whole lot of things, but I'm gonna go over the top and be the best. Right. And I don't really know where that comes from, but I've worked my ass off my entire life. And
growing up, you know, it's foreign to me. You know, you saying you grew up poor. That was never a concern for me. My parents did very well, and I'm extremely fortunate to have the childhood that I did. I grew up playing video games. I was worried about what new Nintendo game I had. That was my worries, you know. So it's completely foreign to me to hear somebody talk in these terms. Were you physically hungry, you know, throughout some of these time periods and stuff like that, or were you guys had enough food?
You know, we did have enough food. Like I said, we were, you know, we would be poaching deer and doing other things that weren't necessarily legal. And there was times I remember my parents, like, you know, we'd buy in like 50-pound bags of, you know, what we ate was 50-pound bags of beans and rice, and that would survive us through the winter.
I see.
But, you know, us kids would always have meat, and I remember times of my parents kind of like shrinking up, and, you know, they would, but they made sure that we were taken care of. So, like I said, it was, yeah, I wouldn't say that we were going hungry.
Right. What about like, around what age do you think you were when you kind of realized like, poaching a deer or something like that, it's just not normal. It's different. You know, like, was there like a realization? Was there a day where you went to like you stayed at a friend's house after school or something, and his mom cooked up some eggs or something, grabbed them from the fridge, or was there ever like a?
Yeah, probably fairly young, and I remember it was kind of something that probably made life a little difficult for me in a series of events here. When I was in first grade, I made a good friendship, and I would go over and do stayovers at their home.
Right.
And this is awesome.
Right.
And so I would stay over at their home every night. And
like,
so
Chris, been here for 3 days.
So finally, it was like, it was like 7 days at one point, and my parents said, hey, this isn't, you need to come home with us.
Right.
Because they were
You're
worried
like, really?
about, that, and I got really upset, and I think I threw a fit, got angry. Like I said, this was in first grade, and that night, my friend's house caught on fire and his entire family died.
Holy shit.
So I didn't speak for a year after that.
Really?
Correct.
That is insane.
So that kind of also early on, and then later, so, they definitely hurt my ability of, again, like interacting and forming relationships and doing all that.
I see, yeah.
And I had something similar happen then again when I was in 5th grade. So this is when we moved to Oregon, the year we moved to Oregon. After getting out of custody, kind of getting that year of supposed normalcy,
right.
I broke my arm, and I had a friend, and he sat there and he wrote everything for me, and he died that year too. So that kind of Ken kind of drew me back in quite a bit. So those were some kind of the struggles and things, like mental things that again, when we talk about lifting, that's for me. There is still, a lot of demons and things to exercise, and probably, part of the things why I'm driven. But
I saw today when you went to do a deadlift. I've seen many lifters, dig deep, before they do a big pull. I've seen it, many times with great lifters. Each guy's got their own thing. Some guys will hit themselves over the head with maybe they'll smash their head into a barbell, or maybe they'll have their buddy smack them on the back of the head, or there's a lot of different things that you'll see. Some guys hit themselves. There's a lot of different things people will do to kind of rev themselves up and get fired up. Are you drawing upon some of the things that you maybe didn't have, or is it just you just getting fired up and focusing in on the lift?
It's a little of both. So there is if you've been through tough times, I think you can certainly draw on that, right? And, I try to use that, but at the same time, I never try to rely on the past. There is only the present. That story I just told, that's another person. That's not me today.
Right.
That's not who I am. That's not who I've made myself. But at the same time, so when I walk up to that bar, I'm asking myself, and I think you've actually got a video, both of us have a video kind of along the same lines. We say, who are you?
Right, yeah.
And that's what it is. I ask myself, who am I?
Yeah.
I've walked through the fire.
Right.
I know it, but at the same time, that was another life.
Right.
Who am I today?
Right.
Right the fuck now. What am I made of?
Right.
And those are the questions I ask myself as I'm stepping up to that bar. And I missed that lift today.
Right.
I think we know why. We talked about my training or overtraining program at the moment.
Right.
It was
the
actually
best program in the world, overtraining. I love it.
But it took me a while to calm down after that lift.
Yeah.
I was, that's the level that I went
yeah,
in
I
there.
saw a clear rage
I had to keep my emotions in check.
Right.
And it was a challenge to do so.
Well, you don't want to dig too deep. You know, if you dig too deep, you can become an emotional fucking wreck on the
Yep.
platform. Let's face it.
Absolutely.
I've actually done that myself, but was able to make a pretty significant lift in a meet. But then it took me like 20 minutes to, it took you 20 seconds. You know, it took you 20 seconds to be like, oh, okay, I need to act like a civilized, normal person again. I can't be a raging lunatic for, you know. So yeah, you do have to kind of be careful where you go to. Let's kind of shift gears here for a second and talk about that world record day, because you hit an 881 squat, and that's what everybody remembers. But for you, it's probably quite different, because you did hit the 881 squat. It's a day of, it's a day to celebrate. It's a day to look back upon and say, you know what, at the time, that may have actually been the greatest squat of all time. You know, there's a lot of great squats, so you don't want to bury everybody's numbers. But shit, 881 squat at 221 pounds has to be, you know, revered as one of the best.
It's not the best by formula, but I think that there's certainly, it's a number that I've had in my head for a long time.
Right. I think you got to put it in the top five.
The heaviest 4 times body weight squat. Yeah, it is in the top 5 by formula.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was, like you said, it was a long time coming. It was a lot of struggle to get there. And even the things that I present, like the shoulder rock and the methodology, the people that follow my material, which is, again, you know, I've got a pretty high level quality of audience that follow my work, from physical therapists, doctors, to chiropractic, lots of trainers.
Yeah, people are calling you the mad scientist.
And, you know, some of the best lifters in the world. I think I have more all-time great athletes, strong powerlifters, coming to me for help than
Eric Spoto's going to any
other
he'll probably
lifter.
come back and hit a 750 bench at some point.
So yeah, Eric's come to me for help. Stan's come to me for help. Ed Combs come to me for help.
Ed who?
Ed something.
Ed whatever.
I helped,
little short guy, right?
A guy named Amit Sapir came for me to help, and within 3 weeks he set an all-time record squat. I've worked with Adrian Larson for a long time. He's set an all-time world record bench. There's another all-time record-holding bencher out there who I am coaching on the side, and will be coming to EPC shortly, dealing with some back issues. So,
yeah.
Oh, and there's me. So, you know, that's a few. There's not a lot of strength coaches that can
working
say
on
that.
yourself is actually really important too. People kind of lose sight of that sometimes.
But that's 7 all-time record holders that, you know, just in the last few months, the list of people that, you know, that I've worked with. And but it's been a long road, and that road is how I got to the 881. So I'm a very driven person, and I pushed my body too far. I broke it down. I had herniated discs, I had shoulder issues, I had all this stuff, and but I'm also a pretty intelligent guy.
Right.
And so I did a lot of research, and I kept looking and looking, and I found some people that I thought had the answers, and started getting introduced to some high-level clinical people throughout the U.S. that were bringing some theories of thought over from overseas, and no one was really integrating it with pure strength training. And so over several years, I started pulling that methodology into that, which helps fix my shoulder mobility issues, getting that centrated with my core.
Right.
You know, all of a sudden, you know, eliminating my shoulder pain, you know, my ability to transfer power in the squat.
Yeah, all that
deadlift.
stuff you talked about with the breathing and stuff today was highly beneficial, and you're only just scratching the surface.
That's just, we barely touched on a few things today, and we had a pretty immediate impact.
Huge impact
on some people today.
Right.
But all that has been years of work for me to, and there's no one out there that is actually that person to say, this is how you do it in the strength world.
Right.
So luckily I'm dealing with some great people on the clinical side and rehab sports medicine side that are very open-minded for open discussion about this is how it works, and I don't know what this takes, you know, and it's a lot of back and forth in figuring out, and then I'm taking a lot of that and figuring out how do you appropriately cue that and coach it in our environment. And you know, it's seeing phenomenal results. You see it in myself, I see it in, you know, just a lot of it I haven't had the chance to put out and produce on content yet, but there's you know, the stuff that I have on YouTube out there and some of my articles right now, every day I get messages from around the world from people going, I've been in pain for 6 months.
Right.
And not only I just walk into the gym and I wasn't in pain, but I just hit a 40-pound squat PR.
That's awesome.
Or,
Yeah.
you know, over the last
That's empowering,
after the last 6 months, you know, I brought my squat up 100 pounds using these techniques. I've been, you know, it feels great, and it's something I'm very passionate about.
Right.
I want to continue to refine and get that message, because to me it's very basic.
Definitely, you know, a huge positive side to a lot of this, sharing information with people, empowering people, making them feel great, making them feel better. But, you know, at the same time, I realize, you know, as an athlete myself and somebody who coaches a lot of people, how much this stuff actually ends up meaning to us and how much it means to you. This is a random question, but have you ever cried from a training session? You ever had a training session not go your way, or meet not go your way, or get hurt and kind of just be completely just so bummed out you've drawn to tears from it?
I have.
Yeah, see, and that's important to share with people. It's okay to cry out there, ladies and gentlemen. I myself too, and I make jokes about it a lot. I'll say, oh, you know, we've all been there. We miss a lift. We go home, we cry, and we popped open a Ben & Jerry's and we down the whole thing and drown our sorrows while we're watching Biggest Loser. But it's important for people to understand that you're not just some guy. You're not a robot that just did an 881 squat because you got stronger. You're somebody who took the time to not only get stronger, but you had the discipline, the heart, the determination to make yourself better over a long period of time. It's not just about the strength. It's about you learning about, you know, the breathing and learning about how to get your body tight and learning how to, the positions and the sensations and watching other lifters lift and picking up tidbits of information. You and I have been communicating for years. I'm sure you have other lifters you've been communicating for years with. And it just doesn't happen overnight. There's going to be some trials and tribulations to the whole thing.
It's a long road, and you know, there's people often ask me, how do you succeed in this sport? How do you succeed in life? And you know, there's three things there:
right,
vision, consistency, and hard work. You've got to know where you're going. You got to believe that you can get there. You've got to see in a vision. A lot of people would think about vision as being a dream. I can dream of being a world champ. That's not a vision. A vision is all the years of busting your ass and the hard work and knowing that you're going to have setbacks and every workout isn't going to be your best, and these are the steps and all the, you know, how are you going to interact with people? How many meets you got to do every year? How you, that's a vision.
Yeah, and part of that vision is having the confidence to believe that you deserve certain things along those ways, such as a world record squat. Because if you don't believe that you deserve it, you'll never actually do it.
Yeah.
You know, you have to be willing to understand the fact that you put in X amount of work that other people didn't do, then you deserve it just as much as the next guy. Why not you? You know?
Yep. That's
a good way of looking at it. The next question was, I wanted to try to focus in on the, so that, you know, the 881 squat, and then you hit a fairly decent bench, but then you smashed your hand on one of your attempts on the bench press. And then we went to the deadlift, and you hit a 705 conventional pull. It looked like a warm-up weight. It looked easy. The weight hopped right off the floor. And now you're set up to do, I believe, a 749 or a 744?
Yeah, I think it was 749. I went 4 next.
Right, so the 749 is setting you up for the all-time 220 raw world record, right? I believe.
Yeah, I would have had it with my second attempt there.
Yeah, you would have had it. You would have beaten Dan Green's total, who's an outstanding lifter himself with multiple world records. And so you step up to the bar, you pull it with everything you got, and why do you bring this up?
Exactly. That meet was actually just a test meet for me too. So I was planning on another meet after that, and I wanted to kind of see where I was at with the weight cut and the strength. And you know, as the day progressed, it's like, wow, I might actually just be able to do this now.
Might be something,
right now.
Something here.
And but because I hadn't been planning on hitting the total at that meet, I've had some elbow issues, and I'd actually just had elbow surgery. And I was trying to let it recover. I'd had some bicep tearing by trying to move too fast on my sumo pull. So I just said, well, I'm gonna pull conventional this day, see how it is. And
just randomly.
Yeah, I haven't pulled conventional in a long time.
Yeah.
You know, I pulled like the 705, and I'm like, you know, I think I'm good for 780 today. And yeah, I walked, you know, but yeah, I smashed my hand on that
On the bench.
On the bench.
Blood gushing out of it. Saw the picture.
Yes, it was quite pleasant. I was, yes. I walked out, pulled that 705 conventional. I didn't really know where I was going to be at conventional pull because I haven't pulled conventional in a long, long time.
Yeah.
But I pulled it, and like I think I'm good for 780, but I was having issues with the hand that got smacked because, yeah, basically this finger wasn't working at all at that
Got
point.
real swollen and stuff.
Yeah,
probably,
it was
right?
all swollen up, and so I thought I would go grab the bar offset.
Oh, perfect.
To reduce the load on the bad hand.
Right.
And I went to pull it, and you know, as I'm getting close to lock, it just, you know, pulled out of my hands, and so made another shot at it, same thing.
Yeah.
And it just, yeah.
Yeah, I remember
Didn't
seeing the video and being friends with you for a long time and seeing your progression over the years. You know, and even knowing the result, like I knew what your total was because I heard it weeks before I ever saw the video. But I still wanted the outcome to be different. I'm watching that last thing, and I'm like, you want to see, and you get right to the top. I mean, you're so close on it, and it just comes out of your hands. But what I remember about it is you were so in the moment, you were so fired up that when you turn around, you know, there's kind of a guy spotting. A lot of times at a powerlifting meet, during the deadlift, there'll be somebody kind of behind the deadlifter. Sometimes the guy can get off balance, or some cases the guy will even pass out. So there's kind of like a back spotter there to make sure the guy's safe. Well, this poor son of a bitch, he didn't know what was coming after him when Chris turned around because Chris was so furious that he had a world record literally slip right out of his hand. So I just remember seeing that, and I'm like, man, that poor guy probably crapped his pants.
Yeah, because I turned around and I was just ready to put my fist through a wall or whatever. And
yeah,
there was a guy there, and I'm like, literally had to like stop myself from putting my fist through him because I didn't know he was right there.
Yeah, he looked pretty skinny. He looked like he could have ripped his rib cage out.
But yeah, it's you can definitely see that in the video. It's a little hilarious.
On that particular day, were you already doing some whiskey and deadlifts, or you weren't into that yet?
I wasn't into that yet, so
that would have put you over the top.
You probably would have. You know, that extra fire. You saw what that did today.
It was amazing. It was amazing. I should have tried 705. Fuck it. Yeah, it worked really well. I mean, I like what you said about you know, how it kind of hinders your, you know, bad thoughts that you might have going into a particular lift. And talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it has a psychological impact, and a lot of people look at alcohol and it has negative impacts long term and short term.
Right.
But immediate, near term, there's some psychological impacts, and most of us all know what they are, but never think about it. But at the same time, it's not something that we want to overuse. We don't want to go in every training
session. Make sure you're
session.
21 and up, kids.
And no USAPL lifters or Olympic lifting or any tested. This is banned.
It's mainly for untested lifters only.
So
that's what we're saying.
That it is. Just to be blatantly.
Drink up SPF.
But you know, it's something you don't want to use all the time. But it all comes down to timing and amount. And you know, there's plenty of, you know, anecdotal evidence, and I think I wrote an article that kind of dropped into a little bit of the science of this. And you know, the Russians are known for drinking their vodka before deadlifts as well.
Right.
And so I decided to, you know, I've been giving it some thought, and I wanted to test it and figure it out and actually see the impact, and it certainly has a positive impact.
Vodka was too Russian for you, so you
so we ran, yeah, exactly. I'm like, well, I don't want to copy the Russians. We're not going to. So I'm like, well, what's more American? We need an American tradition here, right?
Yeah.
What's more American than Tennessee whiskey?
It doesn't get any more American.
I can't think anything more American than that. So Whiskey and Deadlifts was born with.
Right.
We did up some shirts and stuff because of popular demand, all with kind of that Tennessee whiskey flair.
Have other people contacted you and have other people contacted you and said, "Hey, man, I've been hitting up a shot before I lift, and it's been working wonders."
Ever since I've done this, yeah, I've had people get back and they're saying, "Yeah, that works," and it does. So, you know,
I can only imagine the conversation that guys are having with their wives when they get home from the gym and they're so bombed, you know?
Well, that's the thing. You know, in the article I talk about the fact that getting bombed isn't going to help you at all. But just a very small timed amount.
It's a shot 3 minutes before your lift.
Your max attempt. It's not getting drunk before a workout. It's not. So all we're doing is trying to take the edge off. That as you're walking up to that maximal attempt, you're not second guessing yourself, right? Your focus, you've got clarity of focus. The only thing that matters is that bar, and that's all you've got to think about. You've got the confidence boost. You've got a preferential energy source that is one of the most caloric dense, not quite as dense as fats, but also faster acting and preferential over carbs.
Glycerol has been used for years, and that's alcohol substrate or some sort. Like that,
I think
right?
so.
Yeah.
So you've got that. Like I said, the confidence boost. It also reduces inhibition, fear, and pain tolerance. So if you think about all those things, that's going to have a fairly, you walk up to that, and a temporary spike in blood pressure. Which again, you walk up to that bar with an increase in blood pressure, all of a sudden that weight's going to feel lighter, which feeds right into all that stuff. It is a depressant, which would be a negative thing, but alcohol has an interesting impact by amplifying the effects of other drugs.
Right.
And your mood. So you think, well, Red Bull and vodka was a popular drink, I think, in like the 90s or whenever, right? Well, it gets you amped up because it's, even though it's a depressant, it's, people are going
mixing
out.
Some uppers and
People
downers.
are going out clubbing, a bunch of caffeine mixed with it, and all of a sudden, and the same thing. I mean, typically we're getting amped up with, today we were drinking Monsters before we came in, or at least I was. So you've got that, and then just the, you are in that amped state, right? So it amplifies that. Right. Even though it technically is a depressant, it's going to do that. Same time, it does have the depressant effects of calming the tremors, the nervousness, those other things, the jitters, which that's what gives you the focus. That's also why it is banned as a performance enhancer in shooting. Right. Because it improves performance in those fashions. Yeah. So, interestingly enough, it is the first drug that was banned by the Olympics, or that someone was busted for.
Yeah. Okay.
And there's also an interesting story of from the 1904 Olympics of a marathon runner, and it was arguably one of the most challenging marathons in the history of the sport, because it was just incredibly hot. Like some horse had stirred up a bunch of dust ahead of time, and it was just incredibly challenging. And the guy in the lead of the race just was breaking down, and so they ended up reviving him with brandy.
Oh, there you go.
And kept giving him brandy through the rest, and he went on to win. Same thing has happened in cycling a number of times too. Brandy was used quite a bit for reviving and keeping those people moving. So yeah, it's got a long history. Its use dates back to the original Olympics. Yeah. But again, getting drunk isn't going to help you.
You mentioned earlier today, how you like to take everything to the maximum, like to push the envelope, try to be the best at every single thing that you do. And obviously, you're a family man. Aside from the family stuff, what are some other things that you're into?
I'm into fabricating and off-roading. I haven't had as much time in the last few years as doing that. I started my own gym with a partner a number of years ago, ended up building a lot of custom equipment for that.
I remember going to your gym years ago and just seeing all kinds of stuff I've never seen before. You had these benches with these hydraulic things, and you were getting out these drills and shit like that, and making the things go up and down, and making the...
that's on just a handheld device now. So you just press a button and the bench raises and lowers, and we got all sorts of gadgets that I either designed...
Customized stuff that's definitely a lot more convenient than what you typically see out there.
Currently, I've got... so I'm big into off-roading. My tow vehicle has been featured on Spike TV. It's been in the commercials on there for... it's been in the Warren catalog. It was Warren, their big off-road company. Right. So it's been in their catalog a number of years, and was actually the main big billboard display in 500 stores. And that's the tow rig. Behind that, I have one off-road rig. I got one I'm building and one I have. It's been in Peterson's four-wheel drive, I think, on 2 occasions. Cool. The current one.
You do a lot of that building just completely by yourself, or you got a buddy that you do some of it with, or is it pretty much
all by myself? Yeah. So, and I built entire tube chassis from scratch. I mean, it's a lot of very technical suspension and steering design. So I do all that myself. So when we talk about my truck, it's not just something that a lift kit has gone and purchased for. I looked at all the options and said, you know what? None of the companies out there know what the fuck they're doing. Right. Excuse my language.
I'm gonna make something better.
So I cut it. I broke out the torch and cut everything off the frame and designed my own suspension and steering on my, brand new big Dodge diesel.
You're very passionate about this kind of thing. You feel that's important for, you know, the youth of America to kind of, you feel like that's important for like a lot of kids to get into. Are you teaching your children, you know, how to use a wrench and stuff like that?
I think it is. I think men need to be men.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that we all need to do the same things. We all have different interests.
Right.
But in the
all go out and dig some ditches and fill them back up.
you know,
do some back-breaking work.
Yes, I mean,
get your hands dirty.
Men need to get their hands dirty. We need to create things. We need to create the world around us, and that's not a knock on women by any means. Women have their own things that they need. And
they need to
I'm
stay
a big
in the kitchen. We all understand that.
No,
Just
but
kidding.
I'm a big, you know,
But
I'm a big proponent of women as well. But I try to speak from a point of authenticity.
Right.
I'm not a woman.
Right.
But
you
I
would
do
make a lovely one. Let's just be honest. With those legs.
But now you got me, Mark.
Threw you off track.
You did. You know, I just see a huge gap in like what you see in media today, and how, you know, they, you know, if you're doing manly things, it's kind of looked down upon.
Right.
Like what we do, this lifting, all this other stuff. You know, you take that.
You have to have your own gym for it. Right?
Yes.
You have to have your own gym for it because
Yes.
it doesn't conform to fit into a 24-hour fitness or a Gold's Gym or something like that.
Yeah.
You have to have your own spot to have the chalk and to be as loud as you want and to just lift with everything you have. And in order to be the best too.
And blue collar jobs, you know, they're looked down upon.
Right.
You know, people would much rather go to school for 4 to 6 years and work at a Starbucks than, you know, make 2 or 3 times the money, you know, running a machine.
Right.
And actually using your brain.
Right.
I'm highly educated. I've got almost a couple credits. I have a second engineering degree,
right.
An MBA, and tons of additional training on top of that. But I'm not I'm a big proponent of adding value.
Yeah.
And you know, so much our schools, everything is directing people to not do that.
Right.
And it's looked down upon.
With you,
you do trades.
Yeah.
You know, and then just look at any of you that actually watch TV. I mean, watch how men are portrayed.
Right.
Watch commercials. Watch how men are portrayed, and what is promoted and
the
what isn't.
The pussification of America, right?
It's pathetic.
Yeah.
And so I am very passionate about this. You can probably tell that.
Yeah.
But I try to set an example. You know, that's all I can do.
Right.
It's important to me.
You've told me, you know, today that the lifting was a good release from, you know, from the daily grind, you know. And what does working on machines and stuff like that do for you? What does some of this manual labor type stuff do for you?
So, you know, that it just feels good,
right?
As, you know, as a man, to work with your hands to create things and
to kind of put pieces of the puzzle together and
yes.
kind of see what you end up with, sort of thing.
So I'm really big on I really enjoy creating new things via, you know, we can see it with some of the methodology that I'm putting in place, but also the tools that I do. You know, physical tools, the gym equipment, you know, the designing vehicles from scratch.
Right.
I find it very rewarding. You know, my day job is more leadership stuff.
Right.
You know, leadership, cultural development, all that sort of stuff.
So
and
you like
I
some
don't
of
get
that
the
stuff,
opportunity.
but you'd rather...
I love that because I help people achieve things that they never thought they were possible. It's just, it's like, it's coaching.
Yeah.
It's what you do here in the gym, and that's what I do in the gym, but also what I do in the work environment. I love that aspect of it, but I don't get that. I don't get that other those other needs.
So it's interesting because, you know, most people are either using, you know, one side of their brain or the other. It seems like you are stimulated by using both, the creative side and the whatever the hell book side, you know, the book smart side. You're into using both sides.
Absolutely.
Which is interesting to me because I'm a person who, you know, I've completely shut off one side of my brain, and the only thing that really operates is the creative side. The rest is just full of, you know, Kit Kat bars and peanut butter cups, I think, pretty much.
Oh, that sounds good, by the way.
Yeah, I know. Sounds fantastic. Stack them together.
Oh, yes.
Who hasn't done that? What's your favorite food?
My favorite food?
It's a tough choice.
It's a burger.
It's a lot of good stuff.
A really good burger.
Yeah.
So,
cheeseburger, bacon, cheeseburger. What do we have to have on it?
It can have all sorts of things. So I've got lots of specialty burgers.
People don't realize this, but Chris is he's super jacked and he's super lean, but he's a fat guy. I mean, let's just face it. Most of us powerlifters are fat guys. Look how happy he is talking about burger. Tell me what it's got to have on it here. He's got a couple categories that he's going to list out here.
Well, you know, I just recently did a diet, and over 3 months, and the last couple of weeks were pretty tough. Getting down, basically, I got to like bodybuilder contest prep. Is what we did a photo shoot, and the last few weeks, you know, all I could think about was going down to my favorite burger place and actually having their breakfast sandwich. So,
what's the burger spot?
What's
the name of it?
This place is called Tilt.
Tilt. Okay.
Another one of my favorites is Lardo, where they cook everything in lard.
Fantastic.
Pork fat. So they cook the
pork fat. I'm going.
They cook the burgers in pork fat, and then there's a layer. So I always get double patties.
Who's the genius that
and then
started this place?
Then they put a layer of pork belly on top, and then just nice on a bun, and then you get the dirty fries. The fries have all been cooked with in the pork fat, and there's chunks of peppers, and then there's big chunks of pork belly.
You know what this is
just like mixed all in it. It's like 7,000 calories of just like heaven.
You know what this is proof of? There are people out there that are way smarter than us. That is a genius idea to cook everything in bacon fat. It sounds fantastic. What about sweets? You into any sweets?
Pretty much anything chocolate, dark chocolate is gonna treat me quite well.
You said you chucked on like 40 pounds since that.
Don't say the amount. My diet prep guy is gonna watch this, and I'm gonna be in trouble.
21 pounds.
21 pounds. That's all I put back on. So 11 pounds.
When you you're not fat. You know, you don't have a ton of fat on your body. So, what did you do to even lean out? You know, what was the diet prep like? I mean, I know you don't want to share all the secrets, but
well, no, I don't have a problem. But at the same time, I'm going to refer to and give credit to my friend Amit Sapir. He's an IFBB pro. One I mentioned earlier.
Writes for Power Magazine. See how that all comes around?
But you know, it comes down to everybody has, you know, different activity levels, different response to food and training.
Right.
And, you know, it's just managing those macros based on what's needed, how you're responding to it, and continually refining it. And Amit just did a very high level of detail and interaction on going, you know, this is where we're at with a number of training sessions and intensity, and just like, here's your response, looking at, you know, body weight, pictures, and just dialing it in.
It's probably fairly easy for him to shed some body fat off of somebody that's already got a lot of muscle mass.
But in the end, there was no tricks. There's no secret. I mean, it was
calories in, calories
in, calories out. You know, managing
any cardio,
managing fats and carbohydrates sensibly.
Right.
And then playing with those as needed based on training requirements, strength needs. I mean, there's no science, but I can't tell you exactly what I did because, well, I could, but it's not going to be of any value to anybody.
Right. It's got to be specific towards that individual.
It's got to be tailored.
Did you do any cardiovascular training at all?
I didn't. So my time limits are very, very difficult. So that definitely made it more challenging for me to get
with
the
your
shape
work
that I did.
schedule and everything.
So the ability to get as lean as I did without cardio is something that it all comes down to diet at that point. So and it would have been a lot easier to add activity in. I just don't have time in my schedule to do it.
Some bodybuilders and lifters, people that are trying to get leaner will simply add activity, but still keep the calories similar, or pull the calories down over a long period of time, but still keep in some type of sprint work, some type of cardio type work.
And that's what Amit wanted me to do, because he wanted to keep the diet higher than what it was, and have me add that in.
Because he wants to keep the muscle mass on.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing. People make all these big deals about the different styles of cardio. Both styles of cardio work. There's sprint type cardio. There's steady state cardio. You can use either style, or you could just use both. They both work very well. And as I said many times, and I think people misinterpret this sometimes, but if you're going on a keto style diet, it still does come down to calories ultimately to continue to lose weight. And if you're somebody that's going to add in some carbohydrates, you can't add in carbohydrates and keep your fat high at the same time. That's going to have to, as you said, you had to manipulate.
Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of the diets, the tricks or whatever come into. Like I've written articles in the past. I don't think I have any current ones since I updated my website on.
You're talking about strength training. It becomes a whole different thing.
Intermittent fasting and some other approaches that I've done myself with really good effect. But and you can read articles and quote all the research, and I've done that. at the end of the day, I think honestly all they're doing is it's just another way of helping you manage the macros without managing the macros, right? Right. Okay, and here's a keto. It makes it easier to manage the macros. Yeah. It just pulls it down automatically.
That's it.
Here's intermittent fasting. Well, you've only got a window this big to eat in, so you're going to eat less.
Right.
I mean,
it's different ways of masking how to eat less, basically.
Yes.
You know, in a sense. With your, you know, with your powerlifting background and you setting world records now, what's your take on eating for strength, eating for performance? You know, it's of my opinion, especially after just seeing the evidence over the years from the difference of what this guy eats versus what this guy eats, that it almost doesn't really fucking matter a ton on what a lifter eats. If they're trying to stay in a certain weight class, then of course it matters. But just for pure strength and lifting the most amount of weight, it doesn't seem to be too performance related. What are your thoughts on that?
You know, I'm going to digress a little bit because I've never done just eating just for pure strength, right? So again, speaking, you know, I want to speak from points that I feel I can speak from with authority. And, you know, I've never done that. I've always been kind of weight class conscious.
Right.
So I haven't had the experience personally to do that, and I don't manage other people's diets.
Right.
So I see where you're going, and you know, you're probably right.
Right.
But you know, I'm not gonna jump in there.
What style of diet do you follow? I mean, with the exception of the weight cut, you know, exception of cutting weight for a contest, like what do you follow? You know, typically.
Eat everything I can. Right. You know, it's.
There's some rules you try to follow.
There are rules I try to follow.
Okay.
So I always, anytime I eat somewhere, and you've eaten with me now, when I've been in town, I always order double meat or triple meat on anything I do. Right. So first thing, and then I always eat my meats first, or greens if I've got greens, veggies, I eat that first. So I try to eat with that, then move to your meats, and then move on to carbohydrates if you've got that last. Right.
Right.
And you know, there's a lot of people who say, well, what's the point of having a triple patty burger? You're not going to digest that much protein. Maybe so, maybe not. I don't know. I think there's conflicting arguments on the science.
Right.
But in the end, I'm going to get fuller on the protein, and that's going to help automatically control my carbohydrate consumption.
Right.
Other than that, you know, I have tried to increase my meal frequency, especially since working with a meat. And when I've tried to diet before, I think I've cut out carbohydrates too early, too quick, which negatively affected my performance. So I've had more carbohydrates kept in around, basically surrounding my workout than I have in the past when I've gone to diet. And I've added in more meals. So I have, you know, typically been a 3 meal a day guy.
Right.
Or when I did intermittent fasting for like 5 years, it was a 2 meal a day approach. So I've tried to put some more of those in, and that seems to be working well. But to me, it's, you know, making sure that you're eating with a rhythm, always eating more protein first. Right.
And for your particular eating style, you being fat has never really been an issue.
Correct. I mean, there's definitely been points where I've been fatter, and I pulled that off a few different times. Right. So,
but it's not a huge concern. Like there might be some guys out there listening that it might be a little heavier. They're going to have to pay a little bit more attention to the details, to the calories in, calories out type deal.
Yeah.
Right. Let's talk about the shoulder rock for a minute. What do we got going on with this thing? You're twirling around your head, and you're getting some mobility through the shoulders. How did you invent it? How'd you come up with it?
So a number of years ago, maybe 5-7 years ago, I played around with some mace swings.
What the hell's that?
It's something similar to the shoulder rock, but not quite the same. So it's basically a weight on a stick, and it's been used for centuries, primarily with fighting or fighters.
Right.
And it didn't really work too well for what I'd hoped for. I was kind of using it for conditioning. But it ended up hurting, you know, making my elbows and shoulders hurt. But then, as I got into this, the dynamic neuromuscular stabilization and some of these techniques that have helped my squat and deadlift quite a bit, I thought I started going back, thinking about it again, because I was dealing with shoulder issues. I had shoulder pain for about 8 years. You know, just they ached. You know, you're falling asleep at night. You've got to lay just a certain way. You've got to do.
Shit, I've had that. Yeah.
And you know, I've been working a lot of mobility work, shoulder reseating techniques, things like that would get me out of pain like immediately. Right. I'm like, this is great. And I'd be in, and I'd get loose, and I could bench, and I'd get towards my heavy sets, and there it was again. Yeah. And I'd be doing it between sets and doing it. I'm like, there's got to be another way. So I started thinking about the same approach, and I'm going, well, there's a disconnect between this and my core that's likely leading to this, and that's actually where my elbow trauma. So again, this is all kind of this discovery process over several years. Right. And I'm like, I need to get those plugged back together. So I started playing around with the swing again, and with some specific cueing strategies related to the DNS philosophies, and working with some people on the clinical side as well, and getting feedback on that. And I refined it and did it for a month. And at the end of a month, my shoulder pain was gone after 8 years of pain. Holy shit. And that was 2 years ago. My shoulder pain has not been back. That's amazing. What do you think was the main contributor to that? Like, is it the swinging action, the twisting of the bar? I mean, what do you think the main? So it's an interesting movement in the fact that you're opening up and you're moving the shoulder through its entire range of motion. At the same time, you're cueing and firing all the supporting muscles that support the shoulder girdle and its function. So lats, subscap, you know, all these things are working. So you're actively mobilizing. So it's not just stretching. Right. You're engaging and working all the supporting muscles, and then with the specific cueing strategy that I sell along with this, it has the cueing strategy which relates to some of the breathing and bracing that helps get that plugged back into here. Right. And we saw that actually with I played around not with the shoulder rock, but using some of the same cueing strategies and some different tools earlier today. Right. We took someone that had some breathing, shoulder issues. Right. And it was a down-regulating. They were trying to touch their toes and were like 8 inches away. And we worked on that stuff, no stretching, and all of a sudden they could touch toes. They had an extra 8 inches of range of motion. We never stretched. Same concept. So we're able to gain mobility without actually stretching. You knew that you needed a tool that wasn't going to just kind of do this kind of deal, rotator cuff type thing, or just a regular shoulder thing. So I took I developed my own cueing strategy. Based off of those same principles that have helped me, deadlift what I've deadlifted, get the world record squat, and integrated that into shoulder function. And then I took the traditional device and said, well, maybe what they were doing 400 years ago, maybe there's a little bit better technology today. Right. And so we took that, and we've got this nicely knurled and flared in, so you've got that to hold on to. And then we take our precision end here, which is set up to hold Olympic plates. Right. And you can quickly change and have micro-loadable. So you can easily, which a 2.5 pound change in weight in this is huge. Right. So this micro-loadable function of this allows you to change between athletes, change as you progress. I mean, we all know the effects of progressive loading, right? Yeah. So we've taken this device, and instead of now having to have like 3 or 4 of them and then there being big gaps, and all of a sudden you just need one of them. Right. And then use it in the specific cueing strategy, which is actually, so a lot of, if we take a step back and go, what are the root cause of the issues? So issues that were causing my shoulder issues and a lot of people in the sport that we relate, that lift. We do a lot of bench pressing, right? So we've got this big arch because we move more. Yeah. It's not necessarily the best from a human movement perspective. No, the bench sucks. The bench is the worst one by far. Yeah, but it's what we do. Completely unnatural movement. And I liken it to, if you're going to throw a punch, how are you going to do it? Yeah, you're not going to. Are you going to do this? Yeah. No, because actually you're stronger doing this. Yeah, right. Stable, rigid, which actually now we've got the shoulder working off of a solid core. Right. So it's interesting when the shoulder is actually working with a non-solid core. Right. We've got an open chain movement with no stability here and no stability here. So the body's gonna try to find stability. That's right. That's how it works. It has to find stability. Right. So what happens is it just starts tightening up. Right. Yeah, and then you end up with like an Eric Spoto, where, you know, we've actually closed the gap and he's sheared off that tendon. And
Right.
now he's using this so that we don't have the same thing happen again after we've gone through the rehab process.
Right.
We end up with, now we've got some mobility and we're gaining mobility here, and maybe we've got disc herniation issues, which I had. Or, you know, again, we're just so tight in there. We have a lot of, you know, issues going on. For me, the biceps actually started tightening up because they were trying to find, it's working all the way through here and it's trying to find tension. And it decentrated my joint and destroyed, and I've had surgery on both my elbows.
Right.
That was a result of my lack of shoulder mobility. So this is the reason, like an Eric Spoto has, you know, he's gotten so tight that he came up and sheared basically a tendon in the shoulder. Well, we don't want to have that happen again or happen on the other side.
So you got him using this guy.
So we've got him using this, right? We've got, like for myself, trying to find stability here. My bicep actually started tightening. It's trying to find it somewhere, and there's nothing here. So it's just tightening on itself, decentrates this joint, and it just keeps pulling on it. I've had surgery on both of these. I had horrible shoulder mobility. And I fixed that. I mean, you could see it when you watch my squat. That's one of the, I can get in such great position because I can keep this, not fight against this, and get in that amazing position and transfer power now.
Right.
I wasn't able to do that before. It's been a huge piece of that.
Right.
So it's one of those things that can correct that. Again, when this traditional vice was developed and used, they weren't dealing with these issues.
We had Stan Efferding here recently, and you know Stan very well. Stan has abdominals, you know, just abdominals stacked on top of abdominals, stacked on top of abdominals. What he said is 100% everything that you're saying. Basically, when he was talking about doing bodybuilding movements, powerlifting movements, he kept mentioning how important it is to engage the core. Like, if he can do a movement standing, he'll do it standing. If he doesn't have to lay down or sit down for it, he will try to do it standing. He tries to do pull-ups, bent over rows, all these different movements, shoulder presses, anything that's going to engage the core further, he wants to incorporate that. And he does the same with when he's training clients, whether he's training somebody for powerlifting, bodybuilding, or just physique transformation.
So Stan and I have had these same conversations, and he's way ahead of the times in being able to do that, because that's exactly, it's not, we don't want to do this independent stuff. We want to do those items, but have it with a centrated core. Because
It's
the more you do
amazing
that,
the body's connected.
Isn't it weird?
That's so weird.
We're actually meant to operate as a system.
That's what Kelly Starrett has told me before.
But
he's a doctor, so I believe him. I believe him.
I don't know about this.
Yeah, the knee bone's connected to the elbow bone. I believe.
So that's the whole fundamental behind that approach, is helping us reconnect part of those systems. And I've got a number of different tools. This is something I believe strongly in, and it's had a huge impact on so many people that have already been down the path of using it.
What I also like that you said though too is that this is a tool, and you talked about breathing and just standing correctly. We see so many people sitting incorrectly, standing incorrectly. These are all things that have been preached to me many times over by Kelly Starrett. Again, I'll mention him. You know, he's somebody that has kind of hammered that into me, even just with texting being here, and bench pressing kind of ends up here, and everything ends up where we're just kind of like sitting around like this all the time.
Yeah, so we talked about so far like correcting things wrong with benching, right? Well, we see it in overhead pressing, so we see it in strongman, we see it in Olympic lifting, but we also see this in our normal population because of the heightened stress of society today. This stuff starts happening.
Right.
This starts getting tight. The electronic devices actually do the texting, not just the being in this position, but that physical stimulus.
Tactical texting is what Mr. Starrett has taught me. Trying to be in here. So like you're firing at somebody.
But still, even the electronic stimulus and all that other stuff
right.
is having some of those negative effects. And then the sitting. So the sitting, same thing. You know, we've got shortening of the psoas, which downregulates the glutes, and now all of a sudden this hip isn't tight.
Downregulation of the glutes. I don't want that.
Now all of a sudden, you know, our function through the hip isn't tied into the core. Oh, now we're going to have back issues. We're going to have knee issues. We're going to have like all these things that you see wrong with people today.
Yeah,
are from those things. And
is your job that you have? I mean, I know you work long hours. Does it require you to be at a desk?
It does, but I get up and I'm able to move fairly frequently as well. But yeah, it does.
Are you conscious of that? Like at work, do you try to just say, I freaking gotta get up. I gotta move around.
You know, that's one of the things that I wish I did a better job of in like my training logs and stuff like that. And like when I have had injuries and people say, how do you recover so fast? And you know, I do the work.
Right.
And that work may be getting up at my desk, and it doesn't matter where I'm an executive in the company, I'm sitting over there doing my Bulgarian split squats off my chair, my body weight squats, you know, my hip airplanes, all that, multiple times a day right there.
Just right there.
I'm doing the work
yeah.
over and over and over and over and over again. And, you know, you've got to make that a priority. And so many people, like, they'll come to me with like a major issue, and I'll say, this is what you need to do. And I'll check back a couple weeks later. Well, I couldn't find the time.
Well, somebody would come to you and
you
they'll
couldn't
say,
find the you couldn't
say
find the
my
time.
knee,
Well, it's not a priority.
my knee hurts, right?
Yep.
And then what's the beginning of the conversation? When they tell you that their patella tendon hurts.
You know, well, we need to assess the chain, and usually we'll start right with the breathing. When walking through that entire chain.
Talking about breathing, my knee hurts.
Exactly.
That's where it all starts, huh?
Yep. So we see the output on the peripheral a lot of times.
Right.
And yeah, and that's the whole point of like my whole
your
coaching.
Breathing's off, your stability's off, your walking's off, your running might be off, and that might be causing.
So we actually you have to chase that chain and find actually where the dysfunction is.
Right.
Is it because there's an issue in the hip?
Right.
Is it because this oblique here isn't firing, which is then causing, you know, is it, you know, we can chase it, and sometimes it's all the way over here.
Right.
So you have to actually find, where the dysfunction is that doesn't have pain.
Right.
Because your pain's coming from your body compensating and making changes, so, and then that's causing issues elsewhere.
Right. What is your background? Is this just lifting?
My background in this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much just lifting.
Just lifting.
And just messing yourself up.
And I've taken a lot of classes where I'm sitting in rooms full of doctors on the clinical side,
right.
With a lot of the philosophy of this, and also just a lot of interaction.
So
with
you
people,
have
interaction with people on the clinical sports rehab side that are basically kind of some of the key movers and shakers in the U.S. in bringing this stuff to light.
Right. So not even like it matters, but you do have a base in anatomy. You do understand the human body, you know, much better than your average lifter, that's for sure. That's clear when you're showing and demonstrating stuff to me. But on top of that, a lot of it's just kind of trial and error, things that you've kind of, like the airplane, for example, the airplane thing you showed me. Like how did you, you know, how the hell did you come up with something like that?
So the airplane move itself is not something I invented, right?
Right.
But the approach I use to figuring out how to assess and what tools to use, that is from purposeful education. Once I figured out this philosophy and how it relates to strength training, I've gone after it. So I've made sure that I've networked with some of the best people in the U.S. that are bringing this stuff to light on the sports rehab side of it, and also, you know, paid the thousands of dollars to get in and go to all the seminars that the doctors and physical therapists are going to, that are doing on the clinical side. I can't do the clinical piece of it, but I want to know how it works. I want to know the ins and outs of this, right? So I've dedicated a lot of time to learning this and learning how to apply it.
You know, Mike and I, Silent Mike and I today, you know, I mentioned to you, you know, hey, is there something specific that you do before you start a workout? And you're like, yeah, there's some different things I do. And then we both kind of mentioned, hey, you know, we got kind of a bum hip. And boom, immediately you were like, here's the 3 things we're going to do. Or, 3 or 4 things we're going to do.
And that one was here's my general approach to it. Like if we had more time and I was like, we would actually do a lot of more. We did a test.
An hour or something.
Yeah, we did a retest methodology with it. But I would have probably done more testing, more exercises, and we would have dove into depth further. Like what I did with Ed, I had a couple days to work with him, and we came up with a specific plan for his training based on what we saw.
What I liked about it is, you know, it seems like there's not a great reason to, especially before a training session, to stretch somebody like ourselves, to actually try to physically, you know, take the muscle beyond its normal range of motion and get in like almost like a stretch position, like stretching the arm backwards to get more shoulder range of motion. What you were looking for was just more kind of a gentle, you know, glide, you know, Kelly Starrett says glide and slide type thing. And once you kind of feel that tension, you're not really trying to, you know, push through it too hard. It's not trying to really stretch the tissues out. You're just trying to get the tissues to work the way they're supposed to work.
We want them firing and working appropriately with all the other muscles in a system in the body.
And what was different about your approach was
I don't do mobility before I train, unless it's with the caveat, I want to get my to be able to squat, I need to get my shoulders in the best position. And if it's tight, I may do that. But I'm not stretching the prime movers. I'm not stretching anything as we transfer power through the hips, right? But I'm doing things that are working the firing patterns.
Right.
So
yeah, even when we're down on the ground, we're down on one knee and we got the one leg outward. It's not even me just kind of going like this back and forth. It's me consciously firing and reversing. You know, I'm flexing the adductor, flexing the glute back and forth, and trying to, I'm actively flexing and contracting those muscles.
Yeah. And you and Mike were both wanting to go too far. You're like, at first you're going, well, this is a stretch, I got it. I'm like, no, just barely move. We just want these muscles to fire, because what are we going to do? For working out, we're not stretching.
Right.
We're firing.
Right.
So we want good firing.
It's a great learning tool. That's what I noticed from it. It's like, you know, flex your left glute. It's kind of like hard to figure out if you're just randomly standing here trying to figure it out. For you, it's probably not, because you've been working on all these things for a while. And so when you're like, oh, you got to flex your adductor here and flex this there, I'm like, oh. And it takes a few minutes, you know? And then once you get it, it starts to feel a lot better.
But you don't want to go get under a 700-800 pound squat with, you know, this oblique not pressurizing right, so this glute isn't firing, and now we're going to strain this adductor over here, but it was all due to that chain of events, right? We want it all working, and we want to know that it's all working properly first.
Right.
It makes a big difference.
Oh, it made a huge difference for me today. I felt like I got in a much better position. I haven't done a sumo pull in, I would say, at least a year. I definitely haven't done anything over 600 pounds, and I pulled 675 today, and it didn't feel easy, but it felt fairly easy. Felt like I could have done more. So it definitely had a huge improvement.
That's with a little Duffin mad science right there.
Yeah, the mad scientist at his finest. So where can people get the shoulder rock? Where is it available right now? Because I'm sure people are going to be really interested in checking out this product.
Right now, it is currently only available on KabukiWarrior.com, which is my website. So
Kabuki Warrior.
Exactly. Hopefully have some distributors carrying this shortly.
Awesome.
But like I said, this is something I believe strongly in. It's something I believe that every strength athlete in every strength gym should have.
Fantastic. It was great interviewing you. Strength is never a weakness, and that is it from supertraining.tv.